October 2011, the Queensland Performing Arts Centre presented the world-renowned Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra. In a first for the state, QPAC partnered with 6 regional performing arts centres to deliver a live concert experience simultaneously to audiences across Queensland. More than 3,700 people in Cairns, Gladstone, Mackay, Rockhampton, Mount Isa and Townsville all experienced the sights and sounds of this acclaimed orchestra at the same time as their Brisbane audiences. The live simulcast was delivered via satellite, using infrastructure installed specifically for this project. This infrastructure will remain in the regional areas for future simulcasts. Robert Marshall established Heritage Theatre in 1999 in the UK to record live performances of the Royal Shakespeare productions at the Globe Theatre. Robert Marshall, as producer of the QPAC pilot simulcast, then called on his longtime collaborator Kevin Firkins as director. I began the interview by asking Kevin Firkins to discuss his method in directing the coverage for the simulcast.
Well, doing classical music as an OB is a bit of a niche area. For a start, it's best if you can read music. You probably don't have to. You might be able to get around it if you worked with people who could. But it's best if you do read music, which limits the number of people who can do the job because, well, not everyone can read music. And to be a multicam director and read music is, narrows it even more. But the process started with me was when I was asked to do it and presented with the scores, the conductor's score for the works that were happening last night, and a CD with the music on it. So I had to look through the CD, listen to the CD, go through the score, and try and follow the melody or what was being said in the symphony. If the cellos are playing, I've got to get a camera on the cellos. If the violins are playing, I do that. But it's a matter of juggling balls in the air because you can't have like a camera one having 2 shots in a row with only 5 seconds between it. You've got to give him time to get one shot and then move over to the flute or something. So you've got to do that, and you've got to work out the number of wide shots and close-ups so you're not doing the same thing all the time. You give people a sense of the full orchestra, but then you go in and see something specific when a horn is playing. And you need to know what the cameras can get. You get a layout of the orchestra, and you know that the horns are there or the double basses are there, and you have to plan your shots accordingly. We didn't get this until late in the piece, and this will be Exhibit A. I was working on what is a general layout, and it turned out that this orchestra had switched things over.
Oh wow!
And I had to then go back and redo my stuff. But I have to work through the whole score, and writing in pencil, a nice thick pencil that can be rubbed out easily, where I want each of the cameras to take a shot and what they take a shot of, the conductor or the trumpet or whatever. So they're marked pretty clearly with a lot of little squiggles and personal things. All the shots are numbered by the director's assistant.
That's a very complicated document.
Well, it does, but it can't be complicated because you have to look at it instantly and know what you're going to. So it's really the director has to do it his way, whatever's simplest for him or her. You do it that way and everyone else has to follow, really, in a way. But it's pretty straightforward, really, but it's just a lot of work getting it to that stage. But once you've got it there, and all that stuff in there, it's a bit easier process from then.
Can I just ask the question about, as you're going through and designating the shots and what they're covering, so does that mean you see the performance in your mind's eye before it's
yes,
pretty much you're going, okay, we're going, and going with that piece of music? You know?
Yeah, oh, you do. I mean, if you've got a nice melodic lot of violins, you know, you probably want a sweep of the violins, but if suddenly the trumpets come in bang, well, you might want to, you know, you have the trumpet with a quick zoom in or something, or it starts swelling, so you come out slowly from the conductor and then dissolve to the timp. You've got to feel what the music is requiring visually, I suppose, if that makes sense, but you've got to visualise it for the audience there. Otherwise they might as well just sit there and turn on the radio and just listen to the music. There's no benefit in watching it on television unless you can add something to what they're hearing, which generally is seeing the musicians, seeing them close up and doing whatever they have to do, and it's quite fascinating. I find it fascinating.
Last night was just brilliant to watch that whole orchestration of the visuals, and Robert tells the tale, which I might ask you just to, the story about the person in somewhere in northern Western Australia who said to you it was just magic, just as strings, were coming to.
Oh yes.
The camera would cut to the strings, and it was just like magic.
We got these wonderful emails, personal feedback on a performance we did last year, and they said every single time you cut to a musician, they started to play. And we thought, well, yes, yes. And that in essence is the extraordinary skill and craft that Kevin and the team that's been built up around Kevin as well. After Kevin has marked up his scores, and we had 7 or 8 big pieces to do, because we had a concert in Perth that had 3 pieces plus an encore, and then coming to and all of this had to be pre-prepared in Perth, because there wouldn't be enough time between the Perth concert and the Brisbane concert to do any of this pre-production. It all had to be done. I think, Kevin, when did you start? About 2 months ago?
2 months ago at least, yeah. Slowly crawling through.
And of course the issue all the time is getting information out of people. As Kevin said, we didn't have the orchestral layout until about 2 weeks ago, and the Vienna Philharmonic are a unique orchestra in that they have a very, very specific way in which they put their instruments out, and it's because their hall is quite different to anywhere else, and that's the way it works best in their hall, and they just take that to wherever they're going. So the double basses aren't there, they're there, and the cellos are right in front and all of that. So Kevin had to quickly reconfigure all his scripts. After he's done all that work, he hands it over to a wonderful woman from Hobart called Ruth Jennings, and she transfers that into a script which looks very, very similar to this. It's basically, it just will say, shot 1, camera 7, what page it is on the score, conductor, shot 2, camera 6, 1, strings, shot 3, camera 5, French horns, etc. And down the right-hand side, it gives you the beats, how many beats this shot is for.
How many bars?
How many bars, yes. And that's incredibly important, because the cameramen are all musically inclined as well. So if they hear that their shot is going to be 4 bars or 2 bars or 1 bar, they know instinctly how long to make their pan, their tilt, or whatever move that they're going to be doing, because and they're following the rhythm in the music as well as everybody in the control booth.
Can I ask, this is a bit of an aside, because I'm just interested, so in the sense the music provides the structure and the rhythm and the pacing and so forth. I'm just interested because you've also done live performances of theatre. So what's the dividing, how do you, I don't know if Kevin's done theatre performances
Oh,
as
Kevin
well.
did A
Heaps.
Midsummer Night's Dream in May.
Oh, wow.
We've done one of them. Well, I mean, Rob is probably more expert in this, but I will just tell you my process was, you know, similar to doing music in the sense that there's a rhythm to it. And you can always tell with editing that, with cutting, and same with editing, I suppose, that if the rhythm's out and something changes when you think, oh, it shouldn't have changed, that cut wasn't right or something. So you've got to work on, you know, wide shots and two shots and close-ups. But the actors are moving around and they don't often hit the same spot that they did in the rehearsal. So if you're looking for a nice arty two-shot and a throw focus or something, you might not get it because they're standing over there instead of over there. So, but it is a similar process. You work through the script and mark out your shots the same way. But giving cameras time to get to the next shot, all that sort of stuff is the same.
Yeah.
But you don't have to read music.
Yeah.
You just have to read.
But you do have to understand theatre, which is one of the other discussions Robert and I have had about the skills of a director of a particular live performance. It seems to me has to match the enthusiasm for that art form. So as we were discussing, if you're going to be a director of a ballet live performance recording, you have to, if not know a lot about ballet, be very passionate about it, have a feel for what that art form can give.
Absolutely. Kevin in particular has done a lot of ballet in the days when broadcasters regularly did the arts on television. And there is hope that 2012, there's a big anniversary coming up in WA with the WA Ballet, that they'll want to do something like this to celebrate, to mark that anniversary. And I know Kevin will be first in line to do that.
But I mean, a director can't have in-depth information about everything, unless they want to specialise in one thing, like classical music, or do nothing else. But you can't hope to know, same if you're doing sport, you can't hope to know all the rules of every sport. You've got to have a pretty good idea if you're doing it. But if you're doing ballet, I mean, I'm not a ballet dancer. I had very good help from the artistic director of the ballet, who told me that, you know, you should be on a wide shot there because you've got to see the heel or hand turn around or something. So you've got to have good advice when you're doing it. But with all of these things, the basis of multi-camera directing is the same. You still have to do the preparation. You're still there in the OB van in charge. You've got to have your vision of it. You've got to be listening for the audio. You've got to be talking to the floor manager. You've got to know that your vision mixer is awake or whatever. But you know, it all comes down to you. You're the one there that's taking all the responsibility, and you've got to be thinking of a lot of things at different times. So the more preparation you can do, the better, and the more advice you can get, the better, because you can't do it in the van. You can ad-lib things, but you won't get it the same that if you do preparation. We had 2 encores thrust on us, which we didn't have any music for. I couldn't prepare. We had to ad-lib them. And I was very worried about last night's because they'd suddenly announced they're doing the Blue Danube Waltz. Well, you know, the Vienna Philharmonic playing the Blue Danube Waltz, you know, needs a fairly bit of integrity in the coverage of it. But all we could do was pretty well ad-lib it, and I just hope no one in Vienna ever sees it because well, it wasn't disastrous from our point of view.
It looked absolutely wonderful, but
I didn't sort of know enough about which instrument was coming next quite to be there, you know, before it started. So it was a little bit sort of you know, going for specky shots rather than what you probably would do. But sometimes you have to ad-lib things, but hopefully not all the time.
Again, it's all to do with preparation. No one had thought to ask the orchestra before they left, what encores have you prepared? Because they don't come and make it up at the last minute. They sit and plan all of these things. So someone has the information. And of course, if we'd had that, you know, 2 months ago while Kevin was doing all the other scores, we would have been absolutely fine. I have to say though, I sit at the back looking over Kev's shoulder, and both the encore here and the encore he did in Perth were absolutely faultless. They were absolutely wonderful. But someone was saying it's a different part of the brain working, because what happens is that the cameramen know that they're off script, that they're not that there's nothing written down for them. So they just go hunting for great shots. And Kevin is just watching the screens and doing this live cut. That'll cut with that, that'll cut with that, that'll cut with that, that'll cut with that. And of course, with the rhythm of the music. And gosh, it looks scripted to me.
But that would be your experience too,
Oh,
and
well,
your knowledge of the
look,
blue
I've
venue.
done 23,000 football games. I keep saying that AFL type game, not AFL, but waffle games. But live cutting, you know, after you've done that, you I don't know, you just click into a zone, and you're evaluating 5 cameras, and you just say that's the one, and because you haven't got time to think too intellectually about it, but it's all got to work. And again, it's this rhythm thing. You know, how many close-ups have I had? Should I have a wide shot now? Is the music loud? Okay, a wide shot. Is it tight on the violin? Yeah, you know, go to the violin. But you've just got to pray that you go tight on the violin. Just you don't go there just as he finishes and puts the thing down.
Initiative is being put forward a lot by the performing arts companies themselves, and wanting to be responsible for their own documentation of their own events, which is a complete shift, as we've discussed, from the model for training for young students in the past, which has been by the ABC. You know, that was the traditional pathway. If you wanted to do multicam performance, multicam recording of live performances
of,
of the arts, that was where you went to train. But of course, that doesn't happen anymore.
No. But what is happening here is an absolute replica of the UK, which is that broadcasters have, for whatever reasons, abandoned this as an area that they think is important. And so the people who are currently working there don't have a great deal of experience, and don't know the ways of going about doing it. And also, it's not on the agenda. It's not something that people feel ought to be in the schedules anymore. At the same time, major performing arts groups all over the world, and the same thing will happen here, we hope and believe, are saying, well, we don't need the broadcasters. We can build our own skill set and our own teams of people and our own expertise, and the technology will be there, and we can reach the, you know, as the QPAC can reach an audience in Gladstone, Mackay, Rocky, Cairns, Mount Isa, and that is their audience. They are talking to concert lovers in those cities and saying, you're part of our audience and we're going to bring you the best. The National Theatre in London's been doing that now for 2 or 3 years. Shakespeare's Globe does it. Black Swan Theatre did it in May. Obviously Perth Concert Hall does it. And the most obvious thing that leaps out is that these arts companies, these performing arts companies, are now the content producers. They produce the arts. They produce, so simply acquiring the technology and the skills that go with working it is just now on their agenda. And there will be a dialogue, and there is a dialogue with QPAC about moving on from this to the next, and the thing after that, and the thing after that. And what happens is that each one of these organisations then develops the skills for doing this stuff themselves.
That does seem to be the big shift, is that the performing arts companies themselves are now going to be engaging in the training of
and the employment of
these people, and so it's a wonderful initiative, and it's we're just so pleased that the cooperation between QPAC and Griffith to be able to do this masterclass, because it's a real opportunity to share that knowledge, and hopefully this is just, you know, an initial pilot project, an initial masterclass that will grow and develop as it could be a really fine training facility for higher education.
The other aspect of it is that the people who come together to work on these things, obviously they have to do other work all the time in order to make a living. I mean, Cameron will go back to Melbourne or Perth or wherever, and they will take up the run-of-the-mill material that they do. But honestly, they look forward to things like this every single time, because most of their skills are on show when they do this sort of work, and they absolutely love it. And of course, the more you do, the more runs on the board you put together, the more comfortable everybody feels with each other, and the better everything becomes.
It was an amazingly exciting. I was only there very briefly in the OB van that looked like something from Cape Canaveral, but it was really exciting to watch, and the focus of all, like I'm not all sure of all the roles and responsibilities, but the panel of experts that were sitting,
I'll just
run through those.
We have the vision mixer at one end. I sit next to him. There's a him in this instance. The score reader sits next to me, and my assistant sits on the other side of the score reader. Now, the process is that the DA at the end says, coming to shot 37 or something. The score reader has her finger or her pencil on each bar as it goes through, and when it gets to shot 37, I've got to say to the vision mixer, take 4 or whatever. So I've got to see the score, the DA's got to see the score, but the vision mixer just needs my cue. He's watching monitors and things, he doesn't look at the score. So it's all planned out. It's just 4 people, but it's got to be in a certain order, and you've got to have a desk big enough to cope with them, of course. But,
yeah, that's right, and absolute focus, and it was the energy was wonderful.
But actually, Kevin's point was a very interesting one, because it's worth mentioning this. The outside broadcast company that did this particular project, 99.9% of the work that they will do will be sport or rock concerts or similar. And we spent some time talking with them over the phone before we booked this, because we had to explain to them that we needed those 4 people side by side in a row. And they weren't used to that sort of configuration, because invariably there isn't a score reader at a footy match. And so they had to think about that and go whack. And they say, well, where does the score reader, because the score readers sit at the back. And I said, no, I don't think that's going to work. So they had to find a truck that had the physical space for 4 warm bodies to sit side by side.
It was very impressive. And the other question we might lead into now is the fact that the global media were really one of the very few companies in Australia today that we could call on.
Yes. Well, the ABC is the other one, and the only problems I think people have with ABC or commercial companies like Global is that the ABC isn't quite yet entirely commercially orientated. So working with the ABC in many ways is very, very good, but it's extremely expensive, and they can't compete with a company that is constantly sending trucks from one end of the continent to the other to do a football match, basketball match, cricket match, rock concert, etc. And they were so quick, so efficient, so on the ball.
Yeah, because the bump in was like Sunday, and
No. The bump in was on the day.
It was on the day, on Monday.
On the Monday.
Oh, wow.
They wanted to start at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we had a heart attack and said, 10 o'clock? And they said, yeah, that's plenty of time. And we said, do us a favour, would you bump in at 8 just to give us a little bit more? Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, if you want, we'll start 2 hours earlier.
Wow. It was a truly magnificent energy in that van, and people were really focused on what they were doing, and obviously working on performing arts recordings is quite substantially different for the technical producers and the camera operators and so forth. It's a very enlivening experience to be part of a performing arts recording. And I was just keen to know a little bit more about, because we talked earlier about how there might be some subtle differences in that and what's happening nationally and internationally, because it is a very new and emerging field.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, and it's fundamentally the preparation that Kevin would do is basically the same, but the obvious difference between theatre and an orchestra is that the players get up and move around. So in order to be able to script something like that, you need to have a record of the production. So this is where a complexity drops into doing theatre, which makes it different to orchestra, in that you have to be able to work, when you're scripting, with what's known as a scratch video. You have to have a big wide shot that is the whole performance all the way through of the play as it is going to be staged. So that means the earliest you can possibly get that is usually during the previews. And if your show has got a run of 4 weeks, you have a very clear window of about 3.5 weeks in order to script. So you get that scratch video of the way the show's been blocked. You've got the script, the SM script, and Kevin would then go through and mark the script up exactly, as it were an orchestra, but with obviously a lot more movement going on, pans and tracking shots, and if they're necessary. But there's and the pressure of time. You're not doing this 2 months before, because invariably you're just getting in to do the recording just before the run of the play is finished. So there's that area of complexity that makes it a little bit more interesting.
But sorry, the other element with doing drama, of course, is where everyone usually forgets audio till last and thinks, oh, audio will take care of itself. But
that's the audio falling down off my chair.
That's right, cue audio. But with the play, you again have actors moving around, and they're not standing, looking at the camera. They're pointing all around and backstage with it. They have to be mic'd or in some way, and that's a fairly complex part of it as well.
It's a hugely complicated and a very sophisticated skill set that's just emerged in the last 5-10 years. And it's a combination of musical theatre working with television, because the skills have come out of musical theatre. Unfortunately, a lot of artists these days working in that area can't project to the back of the wall anymore inside of a theatre. So everybody these days in musicals, also because the musical director will want to balance them with the orchestra that's playing, so everybody is mic'd and everybody is amplified. The skill of hiding mics in costumes and yet making them still functional and practical, despite the artist may, be turning somersaults across the floor or be in a wrestling match or, flown into the flies or whatever, everything has still got to work. Now, the technology and the skills have moved along with that, and it's an absolutely crucial element. It's a truth that is there all the way through all forms of performing arts. If the audio is not good, it doesn't matter how good the pictures are, the audience, it step back, it doesn't engage.
Exactly.
It doesn't get involved. Yeah.
And it is just such a recent phenomenon that theatre companies are saying, yes, we want to do this too, we want to be part of this. And I know you have discussed a little bit about the Sydney Theatre Company's recent foray, only this year, as I understand it, into recording one of their recent productions, The White Earth, I believe.
The White Guard.
The White Guard.
Yeah.
We
don't know anything.
Haven't heard anything more about it.
No.
But there's obviously a big skills base in what we've been discussing that isn't necessarily easily transferable. And it's interesting. And the other interesting phenomenon is that this is a whole new world of not just production but distribution and exhibition. And I was just wondering, I've heard about the distribution mechanism for the Sydney Theatre Company was meant to be through Cine Live. Just as a quick wrap up, it's interesting to see where these products are going to be in the future, in the media industry of the future. Where will people see this sort of product?
Yeah. Well, there is this new area called alternative content, and it's an expression that's used amongst exhibitors, the people who own the cinemas, the actual theatres, which are all now digital, or most of them are. And given that their equipment is digital, they have a choice now, which previously they didn't. They don't have to take Hollywood product. They don't have to take what comes from the studios. They could show anything they like if it's in a digital form. And so suddenly exhibitors have said, well, what else is there? And to fill that gap, companies like Cine Live, there's also another company in Sydney called Shah Mills, and they bring National Theatre, Shakespeare's Globe, the Metropolitan Opera, the Royal Opera House, Australia, the Opera Australia's will be in there. I don't know whether Sydney Theatre Company has made a deal with them, but this is the process that's going on. The whole industry, the distribution chains are changing, and these companies like Cine Live, like Shah Mills, are specialising in just this sort of material that has no connection with big, Universal Studios or MGM or Paramounts or the Sonys or anyone like that.
No, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic emerging opportunity for the younger generation of multicam directors and producers, and we really do appreciate very much that you've spent this time with us today sharing your knowledge, because it's quite unique and quite hard to track down that kind of deep experience of performing arts coverage. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Yeah, thank you.